The basic idea of this forum really is obvious. It's to talk about, reflect upon, and hear some analysis of recent developments, not only in Egypt, also in Tunisia and beyond, and then to have an exchange and an open forum with the audience.
And I think it's fair to say that the events in Tunisia and Egypt are shaking the region, that people are in fact demanding a greater voice, new regimes, and far-reaching changes. Let me note, however, that this has happened before. We had the revolution in Egypt, and Nasser came to power, and all kinds of expectations were aroused, none of which were fulfilled, or very few. We had the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Again, huge expectations, people rising up, opening up a path to democracy. Again, lots of high hopes, lots of expectations. Unfortunately, those were not fulfilled. So the big question is, will this time be different? In a sense, there is an important new variable that has been introduced into the equation. And that's the role of social media, which has given the people a powerful tool that until recently was reserved for the military and the police, the ability to organize and communicate. And in a sense, that has enhanced the potential of people everywhere to communicate, to congregate, to disperse, and to protest generally. However, the situation remains extremely fluid. I'm fond of quoting Mao Zedong, and I will give you two quotes from him to bear in mind. The first one is, a revolution is not a dinner party. And secondly, when he was asked about the French Revolution, he said, it's too early to tell. Well, it was too early for Mao to speak about the French Revolution. It's certainly, in a sense, somewhat early for us to talk about the consequences of what's happening in the Middle East. But still, there are certain points that have emerged quite clearly. There are many similarities between Tunisia and Egypt. In the first place, the army is a key actor in both states. Ben Ali left Tunisia when the army said it couldn't protect him. In Egypt, the army has played a very important role since Nasser, and may very well be taking over power in Egypt as we speak. After all, the prime minister is a military leader, the vice president is a military leader. And the question is, will they stand and support Mubarak, or will they push him aside? Is the behavior of the military in not confronting the protesters a sign that they are on the side of the protesters? Or is it a clever tactic on the part of the regime? Now, in both cases, Tunisia and Egypt, the protesters were a coalition of secular, democratic, moderates, Islamists, and the like. And again, if you look at the political scene in both Tunisia and Egypt, one of the key characteristics is that there are very, very few viable political parties in both of those societies. By viable, I mean parties that have organizational structures, parties that have financial and other resources, parties that have political platforms. In Tunisia, you're talking about Ben Ali's one party, the RCD, and there's a minor Islamist party, Ennahda. In Egypt, you have the NDP, Mubarak's party, which wins all the elections, or won all the elections, and the Muslim Brotherhood, and some small, weak liberal parties. So if elections were held quickly, people would have a rather lousy choice, it seems to me, because you essentially have only two viable parties in each of these societies. Now, there are also some key differences between Tunisia and Egypt. First of all, it seems to me the quality of the middle class in Tunisia is far higher than it is in Egypt in terms of the percentage of the population, percentage of educated people, economic levels, people who are, quote, moderns, unquote, and so forth. In sheer numbers, of course, given the population disparities between Egypt and Tunisia, the middle class in Egypt is much larger. But as a percentage of the total population, it's smaller. Geographically, Tunisia, in a sense, is lucky because on its borders it has Morocco and Libya and is very close to Europe. Egypt, on the other hand, has as neighbors Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, and has been a major player in Arab history for generations, whereas Tunisia has played a minor fringe role. Now, I would suggest that the odds of a positive outcome in Tunisia is higher than it is in Egypt, that Egypt faces more difficulties. There are two basic possibilities. One, the regime survives. And under regime survival, there are two possibilities. The first is Mubarak hangs on. That with the army, with the support of the army, etc., he manages to hang on. Unlikely, but a possibility. Second, the military takes over and pushes Mubarak aside. Second possibility is that you have elections that are scheduled at some point, and again you have two possibilities. One possibility is that the outcome is a genuine democratic system, one characterized by a free press, secularism, protection of minorities, namely the Copts, and so forth. Second possibility is a Muslim Brotherhood takeover. And I would suggest that this remains a very strong possibility. Al-Baradei has occupied much headlines, and he has certainly emerged as the person around whom the protesters seem to be unifying as a leader. However, he is, after all, an amateur politician. He has no experience in that regard, and one should not underestimate the degree to which the Muslim Brotherhood is organized, capable, and popular. My personal guess, and this is not a forecast, it's a guess, is that we're likely to see regime maintenance with the military in control, and at the same time, the military making concessions to the popular demands. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's unlikely, it seems to me, that the army wants to relinquish power. It's been the dominant force in Egyptian politics since 1952. Secondly, one can think of the army making a deal with the Muslim Brotherhood and letting the Muslim Brotherhood come to power. However, I suspect that the army has watched developments in Turkey very closely over the last decade or so, and saw what happened when the military permitted an Islamic party to come to power, because the Islamic Party moved against the military and has successfully managed to downgrade the position of the military and power of the military. Now, in terms of US policy, we have two options. Number one, it is to push for change, which I think we would all agree is the right thing to do, or support Mubarak. That is obviously not what we are doing. We are pushing for change. The issue, however, as I've suggested, is what kind of change. And it is important to realize that until now, we have essentially worked both sides of the street.